Hey, Shalom, guys. Welcome to another episode of Who is the Suffering Servant? Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at Isaiah chapter 53, verse 4, and this is what it says. However, it was our sicknesses that he himself bore, and our pains that he carried. Yet we ourselves assumed that he had been afflicted, struck down by God, and humiliated. What a powerful verse. The Messiah is acquainted with sickness, Isaiah says. Quote, surely our sicknesses he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Now, the Gospel of Matthew points to the healing ministry of Yeshua of Nazareth as a fulfillment of prophecy. So this is what Matthew says here in Matthew chapter 8, verse 16 and 17. He healed all who were ill. This was to fulfill what was spoken through Isaiah the prophet. He himself took our infirmities and carried away our diseases. So here, in the Gospel of Matthew, he is alluding to the fact that what Yeshua has done for us calls all the way back to Isaiah the prophet. Now, Jewish apologists use Isaiah 53:4 to prove that Yeshua of Nazareth is not the suffering servant, right? Many point out that the Gospels never say he suffered sicknesses, right? So, for example, the Rabbi Jacob ben Reuben writes this, quote, I know, in fact, that you will not find either in your own New Testament or in the words of the wise men of your own religion who tell you about the Messiah and his deeds, or, in fact, in any book in the world, that he ever had a pain, even a headache, up to the day of his death. Only one visited with various kinds of diseases is said to be smitten of God. Now, this is what anti-missionaries will use to, again, try to destroy the fact that the suffering servant is Yeshua, is Jesus, by bringing up this, it's a verbatim fallacy. That's essentially what this is. Where show us the sickness, show us the verse in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John where Jesus was sick and was lying on his deathbed or anything like that. But is that really what it's talking about? On the contrary, our master did suffer sickness like any man. Quote, he had to be made like his brethren in all things, Hebrews 2:17. Indeed, he was subject to every human weakness and ailment. Quote, he himself was tempted in that which he has suffered, Hebrews 2:18. For the common cold, death itself, he suffered as a man. The Gospels never indicate that he did not suffer sicknesses. And even in early Judaism, sickness and suffering were often seen as direct punishments for sin. The sicknesses and suffering of the Messiah led men to the false conclusion that he is stricken or smitten of God and afflicted for his sins. Now, this is what the Ramban or Nachmanides says. He was pained for the iniquities of Israel, okay, which occasioned his tearing and holding back from becoming king over his people, and known to sickness because a man who is sick is continually distressed with pain. Yet he carried our sicknesses, being himself sick and distressed for the transgressions which should have caused sicknesses and distress in us, and bearing the points which we ought to have experienced. So again, right here, he bears the iniquities of Israel. He bears the sickness of Israel, right? One who is stricken of God. Now, this is what Rabbi Moshe Cohen, IBN Chrisman, says also. Quote, his grief will be such that the color of his countenance will be changed from that of a man, and pangs and sicknesses will seize upon him. For great grief, as physicians know, by producing melancholy, subjects a man to many diseases. And all the chastisements which come upon him in consequence of his grief will be our sakes. Truly, all his pains and sicknesses will be on us. Continually, he will be prostrating himself and stretching out his hands to God on our behalf and praying him to hasten the time of our redemption. Now, again, these are all Orthodox rabbis who they don't believe in Jesus. But from what they have read in the Torah, by looking at the gematria, every single letter, they have come to these conclusions, which again, who fulfills these conclusions is Yeshua, the Messiah himself. The Hebrew word translated here as one stricken in Isaiah 53:4 is nagua, a catastrophic, shocking disease. In the Bible, leprosy is sometimes called nega, a tractate in Sanhedrin of the Talmud. The sages discuss different names and titles for the Messiah. One of the names offered is the leper and the sick one, because the Messiah takes up himself the diseases of Israel. And the rabbis say, quote, his name is the leper. Those of the house of the rabbi say the sick one, right, or the nagua, as it is said in Isaiah 53:4. Surely our sicknesses he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. And this is from Tractate Sanhedrin 98b from the Talmud. Now, likewise, the Talmud also depicts the Messiah wrapped in bandages, lying among the lepers at the gates of Rome while he awaits the final redemption. And you can find that tractate in, again, Sanhedrin 98a this time. The Midrashic collection of Peshitta Rabbiti envisions a conversation between God and the soul of the Messiah prior to the creation of the world. In the imagery conversation, the Lord here, Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, is unwilling to create the world unless the Messiah first consents to suffer on behalf of Israel, right? And this is what it says. The Holy One brought forth the soul of the Messiah and said to him, are you willing to be created and to redeem my sons after 6,000 years? He replied, I am. God replied, if so, you must take upon yourself chastisements in order to wipe away their iniquity. As it is written in Isaiah 53:4, surely our sicknesses he himself bore. The Messiah answered, I will take them upon me gladly. This is Peshitta Rabbiti. This is just so powerful because, again, guys, this is all rabbinic commentary. All rabbinic commentary. This is nothing messianic. This is nothing of New Testament. This is nothing of Greek philosophy. This is Orthodox Judaism right here. And even within here, it is said, now, of course, this is a midrash, right? This is not supposed to be literal. God literally didn't talk to the soul of the Messiah like, hey, you're going to redeem my people after 6,000 years. This isn't literal, but it's to give us a foreshadow of what is going to happen, right? It is a drash. It's not supposed to be taken literal. But how crazy is this? Talking about how God has this deal basically with the Messiah that he will come, right? And he will bore the sins of Israel, right? Which again, in the New Testament here, Paul says that Gentiles or the Goyim who are grafted into Israel are now part of Israel, right? So essentially now all of mankind, he will pay the price for it. And he says, and the Messiah answers and says, I will take them up gladly. How crazy is that? In the Zohar, the Messiah takes upon himself the sicknesses and the chastisements due to the people of Israel. His suffering is likened to that of a simple limb, which a physician must bleed in order to bring healing for the rest of the body. Quote, the Messiah that enters and summons every sickness, every pain, every chastisement of Israel. They all come and rest upon him, and were it not that he had thus lightened them off of Israel and taken them upon himself, there he had been no man able to bear Israel chastisements for transgressions of the Torah. This is that which is written in Isaiah 53:4. Surely our sicknesses he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. And this is from the Zohar again. So again, the Zohar being a mystical writing, part of the Kabbalistic mindset, even sees, right, the symbolism of Isaiah 53:4 of the Messiah bearing our sicknesses, acting as the doctor to take on all the sins and basically fixes them, makes them all good again. When the Holy One desires to give healing to the world, he smites one righteous man from among them, and for his sake he heals all the rest. From where do we learn this? From the saying in Isaiah 53:4, surely our sicknesses he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Again, from the Zohar. And our last one from the Zohar right here. At that time when the Holy One desires to atone for the sins of the world, like a physician who, to save other limbs from bleeding the arm, he smites their arm and heals their whole person, as it is written in Isaiah 53:5. But he who pierced through our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. So guys, again, the Zohar makes it very clear. We see these Orthodox rabbis of Moshe, IBN Crispin, he says this commentaries. The Ramban Nachmanides, he also says these commentaries. The Messiah will come. He will come as the leper. He is the leper Messiah because he takes on the sicknesses from us to make us clean, right? Not only does he atone for our sins, but he forgives the sins. He washes it away. He bleaches it out so that it never existed. And again, guys, we can only get this way through the Messiah, who is Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Christ, the Messiah. I hope you enjoyed this teaching and commentary. Please like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Shalom.